Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the Tulsa Regional Chamber's State of the State, featuring Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt. The Chamber is honored to host Governor Stitt today for his annual address to the Northeast Oklahoma business community. Before the governor begins, we'd like to recognize the generous sponsors who have made today's event possible, as well as the individuals from those companies joining us virtually. The 2020 State of the State is presented by Spirit Aerosystems, represented today by Ed Durr, Senior Director of Oklahoma Operations. Our AV sponsor is TES Productions, represented today by President Michael Frankenberger. Our gold sponsors are Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Oklahoma, represented today by President Dr. Joseph Cunningham, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. CEC Corporation, represented today by Oklahoma market leader Cassie Reese-Tipton, a member of the Chamber's Board of Advisors. Cherokee Nation Businesses, LLC, represented today by Principal Chief Chuck Hoskin, Jr., a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Cox Media Group, represented today by Market Vice President Kathy Gunther, a member of the Chamber's Board of Advisors. Gable Gottwals, represented today by Chairman and CEO John Dale, the Chamber's Board Secretary and Chief Legal Counsel. Matrix Service Company, represented today by President and CEO John Hewitt, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. One Oak Incorporated, represented today by President and CEO Terry Spencer. Oral Roberts University, represented today by President Dr. William Wilson, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Retrospect Films, represented today by owner and founder Jason Burks. St. Francis Health Systems, represented today by President and CEO Jake Henry, Jr., a past Chamber Chair. Schnocky Turnbow Frank, represented today by Partner and Chief Financial Officer David Wagner. And TTCU Federal Credit Union, represented today by President and CEO Tim Lyons, the Chamber's Vice Chair of Education. Our legislative benefactors are American Airlines, represented today by Managing Director of Base Maintenance Eric Oland, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. AT&T, represented today by Director of External Affairs Mike Cooper, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Community Care, represented today by CEO Bob Bush, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Cox Communications, represented today by Vice President and Tulsa Market Leader Roger Ramsire, Chair of the Tulsa Regional Chamber. Grand River Dam Authority, represented today by President and CEO Dan Sullivan, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Public Service Company of Oklahoma, represented today by President and Chief Operating Officer Peggy Simmons, and member of the Chamber's Executive Committee. Quick Trip Corporation, represented today by Manager of Government and Public Affairs Mike Thornbrew, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. And Tulsa Tech, represented today by Superintendent and CEO Dr. Steve Tiger, a member of the Chamber's Board of Directors. Our silver sponsors are Bank of Oklahoma, Helmrich and Payne Incorporated, Lamar Outdoor Advertising, Tulsa World Media Company, and WPX Energy Company. Please also take note of the corporate sponsors listed on the event webpage. Joining us now to introduce Governor Stitt is Rose Washington, CEO of Tulsa Economic Development Corporation and Chair-elect of the Tulsa Regional Chamber.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us at the Tulsa Regional Chamber's State of the State. One of the Chamber's key initiatives is business-driven legislative advocacy. Through the engagement of hundreds of our member companies and dozens of area communities, the Chamber-led One Voice Regional Legislative Coalition represents Northeast Oklahoma's collective vision for economic prosperity. Not only are we proud to have a Tulsa businessman in the governor's mansion, but the One Voice Coalition has a true partner in prosperity with Governor Kevin Stitt. Since taking office in 2019, Governor Stitt has been a stalwart champion for business and government modernization. His first year was marked by sweeping changes to the structure and function of state operations. In particular, he emphasized Oklahoma's digital transformation to improve the quality, delivery, and efficiency of state services. He also prioritized a modernization of Oklahoma's criminal justice reform, signing the largest single-day commutation in U.S. history. However, as we're all very aware, his second year in office took a very unexpected turn. Governor Stitt has faced the unprecedented challenge of leading Oklahoma through a global pandemic and the ensuing fallout. His administration was quick to augment federal relief for businesses with significant state assistance, including the Oklahoma Manufacturing Reboot Program and the Oklahoma Business Relief Program. The governor worked with the legislature to update Oklahoma's open meeting laws, allowing for capital business to be conducted remotely. He also swiftly signed into law meaningful liability reform to protect frontline healthcare workers, hospitals, and businesses from frivolous lawsuits during the recovery. And his shoring up of the state's rainy day fund last year has proven exceedingly wise, helping offset the pandemic's impact on core government services. Despite the challenge of COVID-19, the governor has remained one of Oklahoma's most passionate advocates for economic development. During this year's legislative session, he vetoed a bill that would have eliminated a critical incentive for attracting job creators and innovators to our state. He has worked with the legislature to enhance important economic development tools, including the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund and the Oklahoma Film Enhancement Rebate. Most recently, as I'm sure everyone here today has seen, the governor was an outspoken champion of Tulsa's effort to attract a Tesla gigafactory. Tulsa went from long shot underdog to finalist contender, thanks to the governor's leadership and overwhelming community support. While Tesla ultimately chose Austin, the publicity and exposure our city and state earned during the selection process is invaluable. The Tulsa Regional Chamber is honored to have the governor with us today, and we look forward to hearing more about his continued drive to make Oklahoma a top 10 state. Joining us now, Oklahoma Governor Kevin Stitt.
Good afternoon. It's always great to be back in T-Town, even if we're doing things a little differently this year. When I had the honor of speaking to you last year, we talked about how the legislature gave the executive branch the authority to recruit and hire the best leaders for 5 of the Oklahoma's largest state agencies. They gave me the power to appoint the commissioner of health, but I had no idea that I would end up on the phone with the commissioner of the NBA. Let me kind of fill in the rest of that story. So it was March 11th, and I went to the Thunder game versus the Jazz in Oklahoma City to try to recruit a business to come to Oklahoma City. I told my son, my 10-year-old, I said, bring your basketball and your Sharpie, and I go, we're going to go to the Thunder game. So while I was there for about 5 minutes, and 5 minutes before the tip-off, it was the commissioner of health. And he said, Governor, where are you at? And I said, well, I'm at the Thunder game. And he said, well, we just found out that one of the Jazz players tested positive. Again, this is before anything had happened. We're 5 minutes before the tip-off. I said, who knows this? He said, you're the only one that knows. I said, stand by. So I went and told the security, I said, go grab Clay Bennett. Let's meet in the basement. I said, I need to talk to him. We got Clay Bennett. Then we got Adam Silver on the phone. There was no protocol at this point. The NBA didn't know what to do. Clay Bennett, myself, Our commissioner of health made the decision to call that game. We sent everybody home. 10 minutes afterwards, the whole NBA season, everything was put on hold. Uh, we had to wait 144 days, but I was so excited to see the Thunder back on the court this weekend and beating the Jazz 110-94. So my son Remington had his basketball and his Sharpie, and I remember him walking down the halls as we were fixing to call the game, and he turned to Mr. Bennett and said, "Am I going to be able to get any autographs today?" And Clay Bennett said, "Remington, I'm going to get you all the autographs that you want, son." And anyway, it was a great, it was a good memory. We made the right decision, and glad to see the Thunder and the Jazz back playing ball. But you don't need to tell me, that this year has been unlike any other that we've have ever experienced in our lifetimes. COVID-19 has affected each of us, and I know the constant headlines can be discouraging and leave you wondering when we'll ever be able to get back to normal. And I want you to know that as Oklahomans have united together to serve their friends and neighbors during these unprecedented times, we have an incredible team of dedicated people working day and night in our state government to help us move forward and recover from this stronger than ever before. Today, we are 103 days into our safe reopening plan. And I believe that Oklahomans have handled this better than any other state. And we'll continue to see the results of that as we move forward. On March 30th, we had 560 people in the hospital being treated for COVID across the state of Oklahoma. Yesterday, we had 504 people in the hospital with capacity well above that. And my first priority has always been to protect the health and lives of Oklahomans, and then to mitigate the impact to our economy and get Oklahomans back to work safely. We are months and months and months ahead of other states in our recovery. Some states are still closed down. Our businesses are fully reopened at this point. And as businesses have innovated to create new ways to operate, my administration has found new ways to support our businesses and the hardworking Oklahomans they employ. Through the CARES Act, we've been able to offer a number of new programs, including the Oklahoma Business Relief Program. We have awarded more than $100 million to more than 5,000 businesses across our state. And I made it a priority to reserve 20% of the funding for minority-owned businesses. And I'm proud to report that we were able to support dozens of minority-owned businesses right here in Tulsa. I'll be meeting with some of these Tulsa business owners later this afternoon to continue to discuss how we can support small business during this difficult time. We also started the Oklahoma Manufacturing Reboot Program and the Oklahoma Bounce Back Program, which helped manufacturers pivot to start producing items that our state could use in the fight against COVID or to support other critical industries. And we've seen companies innovate and start producing surgical gowns, hand sanitizers, face shields. Some use their grants to start producing parts right here in Oklahoma that they used to import from China. CARES Act money is also being used to help Oklahomans in their homes. Back in June, we announced an eviction mitigation program at Restore Hope Ministries right here in Tulsa. This program partners with local nonprofits to provide up to $3,600 per family to help those impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic maintain housing stability. As we get close to the start of a new school year, I also wanted to give you an update on how we are supporting our schools. School districts across the state were directly awarded $145 million based on their enrollment and number of low-income students. Districts could use this money for things like buying cleaning supplies, new technology, or a number of other expense categories. Tulsa Public Schools received more than $16 million directly and another $360,000 as a part of an incentive grant program we offered in partnership with Superintendent Joy Hoffmeister and the State Department of Education. We also committed $12 million for schools to be able to purchase digital curriculum content and ensure that all Oklahoma students have the chance to take challenging courses regardless of where they live or their socioeconomic status. We've also invested $8 million in grants to low-income families to help them purchase tutoring services or technology. We know that the distant learning at the end of last school year was far from ideal and has a disproportionate effect on students depending on their situation at home. That's why I'm so proud of the programs we have in place to bridge that gap. And also that we were able to provide PPE for our school districts who are going to offer that critical in-person instruction this fall. We asked the State Department of Education what PPE our schools needed, and we'll be distributing masks, face shields, gloves, and gowns to schools across the state in the coming days. We are also awarding money to every city and county in the state to cover eligible expenses. This money will be awarded based on population, and I'm happy to announce today that more than $30 million is on its way to the city of Tulsa, and more than $7 million is on its way to Broken Arrow. I also want you to know that transparency around all of these CARES Act programs is critical to me. Congress directed these funds to the governors so they could be distributed quickly and effectively. But we set up a bipartisan legislative advisory group that we meet with regularly, and we are also publishing detailed reports of our projects and expenses online. Despite the challenges that we have faced in 2020, we are still moving in the direction we all want to go, and that's top 10 in the nation. We take second place to no other state. And you've heard me say over and over again that Oklahoma can and should be a top 10 state. This is more than just a slogan. It's the vision that helps form and guide our roadmap to improving our state government and changing the future of all 4 million Oklahomans for the better. In order to ensure we are effectively pursuing this vision, we have launched an easy-to-understand scorecard at gov-dashboard.ok.gov, which allows our state leaders and agencies to monitor how we compare on the national level and make informed decisions in order to move the needle in the areas that we are working to become top 10 in. What this scorecard shows is we are successful delivering results in many areas. So just a few. To start, we lead the entire country in energy affordability. We are number one in retail price per kilowatt hour of electricity. It's lower than any other state, which I thought would have been important to a certain electric car company you might have heard about. You know, in all seriousness, even though we didn't come out on top for Tesla, the effort so many people put into that project will pay great dividends for our state down the road. Our Secretary of Commerce, Tulsa's own Sean Copeland, did an incredible job leading that way. And we had great partnerships with your very own mayor, Mayor Bynum. The city of Tulsa did a fantastic job. The Tulsa Regional Chamber, George Kaiser Family Foundation, and many others. Jeff Stava did a fantastic job. Tesla took notice of how well we work together, and I have a feeling we'll be hearing from them again real soon. Just yesterday, we announced the Oklahoma Automotive Accelerator Program. We're going to be using the Quick Action Closing Fund, the Automotive Engineering Workforce Tax Credit, and expedited permitting to reel in the suppliers and other companies that will need operations close to Tesla's new facility in Austin. And I also want to remind you that Austin was the first runner-up a few years ago when Tesla decided to build in Reno. Our time will come, and it will come soon. We had almost 2,400 engineers submit applications for a hypothetical job posting for a Tesla factory in Tulsa. 31% of them came from top 100 engineering schools. We tracked almost 2,000 articles that mentioned Oklahoma in regard to the Tesla project. Those articles were in more than 50 countries and gave us great exposure in Europe and Asia. Those articles were viewed by an estimated 30 million people. Now, that is marketing. I can assure you that the state of Oklahoma is going to capitalize on this momentum in a big way. I call Secretary Copeland our big game hunter, and I know his team will continue the partnership with the Tulsa Chamber to get these projects across the finish line. Tesla aside, Oklahoma is very much open for business, and companies are taking notice. We have 116 projects currently in the pipeline, and during the 2020 fiscal year, Commerce helped bring more than $711 million in investment to Northeast Oklahoma, and more than $591 million of that came right here in Tulsa County. In the last month alone, we've had 4 wins that accounted for 305 new jobs and around a $6 million investment. Another area where we have seen top 10 results is our unemployment rate. Our unemployment rate peaked at 14.7% in April, but in June, that number dropped to just 6.6%. It's still higher than we'd like it to be, but it's the 5th best in the country and almost 10 points better than states like New York, New Jersey, and California. Allowing our state to be open for business is paying off in the form of Oklahomans getting back to work, being able to earn a paycheck, and support their families. When it comes to unemployment, the OESC is making good progress responding to a historic amount of claims on an incredibly outdated system. Secretary of Digital Transformation David Ostro and OMES Director Steve Harp have done a great job of offering the technical support that we can. But I know the process has been frustrating for many people. And as governor, it's been frustrating for me as well. However, I am confident in the direction we are heading. Executive Director Shelley Zumwalt is doing a great job, and we are committed to using CARES Act dollars to modernize the outdated technology at OESC to prevent this from happening again. The OESC announced the State Extended Benefits Program last week, which will continue to provide benefits to Oklahomans for up to an additional 13 weeks. Since March 1st, just to give you some numbers, OESC has processed nearly 700,000 claims and paid out more than $2.59 billion in benefits to Oklahomans. We've increased the number of people who had their issues resolved on their first phone calls to the claims hotline by 40%, and we've reduced the claims backlog from over 129,000 to an average of just 10,000. I want to thank our processing agents for the hard work and the long hours they put in as they try to serve an unprecedented number of Oklahomans on a system that has been outdated for decades. The number of first-time unemployment claims continues to drop again last week, and I'm optimistic that our unemployment rate will be even lower when the July numbers come out in just a few days. Another area that we've seen significant progress in is our bridge conditions. You know, within 15 years, Oklahoma has moved from 49th in the nation to 13th in sound bridges. And in the coming months, I fully expect to be in the top 10 once that updated federal data is published. This is a testament to the hard work and commitment of my Secretary of Transportation, Tim Gatz, and the team at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. I look forward to taking this same level of commitment and focusing on improving our ranking of Super 2 roads and pavement quality across the state. On another topic, on the campaign trail, I heard from so many Oklahomans who were disappointed that we had a higher incarceration rate than any other state. We were in the last place. And I have been committed to addressing this since I took office. And I'm proud to say that since last July, we have continued to make historic progress in both public safety and criminal justice reform. This is largely due to getting the right leaders in place to collaborate and affect change across our state agencies. My Secretary of Public Safety, Chip Keating, has been working with our agency leaders to make this happen. To name a few successes, District attorneys and law enforcement officers across the state continue to prioritize the public safety of Oklahomans every single day. And this year, Oklahoma Highway Patrol was able to have a trooper academy for the first time in 3 years. We just graduated 61 new troopers to protect our citizens. Under the direction of Director Scott Crow at the Department of Corrections and former Director Steve Bickley at the Pardon and Parole Board, we were able to accomplish the largest single day commutation in U.S. history last November. In doing so, we fulfilled the will of the people and gave over 450 low-level nonviolent offenders a second chance. Since my administration took office, the number of Oklahomans in our state prisons have declined by 13% year over year. As a result, the number of those incarcerated is the lowest level in 15 years. Moving us from last place, 50th in the U.S., we're now ranked 47th. This is reducing the strain on our prison facilities and giving us the opportunities to reimagine the future of housing inmates. Due to the decrease in the prison population across the state, we were able to close a private prison, saving the taxpayers $54 million per year. Violent crime is also down in Oklahoma by 10.2% year over year, and nonviolent crime is down 1.5% year over year. Further, our recidivism rate is low in Oklahoma. In fact, DOC reports that only 22% of inmates released from their custody reoffend within 3 years of release. This data shows that Director Bickley and Director Crow have successfully led their teams to execute on the mission and vision of their agencies by making our state a safer place to live, while also offering our fellow Oklahomans a second chance and saving taxpayers over tens of millions of dollars in the process. We need to keep this momentum going. Our sentences are inconsistent across the state and need to be addressed. You're going to hear a lot from out-of-state interest groups who want to change our Constitution via the initiative petition process to put arbitrary caps on the amount of time a domestic abuser can spend in prison. This is not the right solution to this problem. The answer is a thoughtful, well-researched sentencing code that provides consistency and clarity for victims, prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges, as well as defendants. This means working together across the branches of government to completely rewrite the sentencing code. I look to the legislature and the Attorney General to work with the Restore Task Force and the administration to get this done and help Oklahoma become a more fair and just state for all. You know, before I close my comments, I want to take a brief moment to address a pressing issue for the state of Oklahoma and how it will define our future for the next 15 years and beyond. I truly believe Oklahoma is more unique than any other state in the nation. We are a land of promise, of hope, and of prosperity for all. We are home to tribes like the Comanche Nation, who have called Western Oklahoma home since the early 18th century, and many tribes who traveled the Trail of Tears in the 1820s, and tribes like the Oto-Missouri tribe, who arrived as late as 1881. We are home to African Americans who created 50 cities across Oklahoma, beginning as early as 1865. And with their freedoms, they made Oklahoma the epicenter of a new economy and new economic institutions, such as the Black Wall Street in the early 20th century. And we are home to the numerous young families who traveled from across North America to be part of the land run in 1889 as they established new farmlands and discovered the benefits of cultivating our natural resources. In 1907, Oklahoma's state constitution received overwhelming support from voters of both Oklahoma and Indian territories. On the day of statehood, Oklahoma was represented by Charles C. Jones, who called this day a matrimonial ceremony, one to which no divorce can ever be granted. With thousands in attendance, a marriage ceremony was performed to cast a vision for one Oklahoma. Charles Haskell, the first governor of Oklahoma, said at the ceremony that the new union was not placed in our Constitution as a political requirement, nor for mere sentimental purposes, but because a majority of the people believe that humanity will be bettered by it. In 1907, Oklahomans believed we were better for being one people, one economy, one unified state. When I came into office, two major events unfolded that have become a monumental test of this marriage. First, the U.S. Supreme Court took up the McGirt versus Oklahoma case and reviewed whether a violent child rapist could be tried in state court when the crime had been committed in Indian country. The Supreme Court wrestled with Oklahoma's history and whether Congress had ever de-established the Indian reservations that had previously covered up much of the land. Second, I also inherited letters from tribes stating that Oklahoma's most significant compact in a century, the 2004 Gaming Compact, was outdated and expiring on January 1st, 2020. This 2004 Gaming Compact established a $9.8 billion industry. It gave Oklahoma tribes exclusive access to market competitive Las Vegas style games in a one-size-fits-all approach. In return, the state would not exert any meaningful oversight over Indian gaming. The state also acknowledged the sufficiency of a gentleman's agreement, namely 4 cents paid on each dollar earned by the tribes would go to public education. This agreement remains unlike any of the other 40 compacts Oklahoma governors and individual tribes have entered into in our history. As you know, last month, the U.S. Supreme Court determined that Oklahoma's Indian reservations, more than a century after statehood, are still intact in some form. And the U.S. District Court recently ruled that the 2004 Gaming Compact is left to exist forever until a small state agency declines to issue gaming licenses to the horse racing tracks in Oklahoma, which are now owned by two of Oklahoma's largest tribes. I might add that the state agency is required to issue those licenses on an annual basis. Within a matter of 1 week, the courts have put Oklahoma in a position where we must face questions of constitutional proportions. How will the state of Oklahoma or its municipalities regulate? Can the state ensure a level playing field for all businesses? Who will pay taxes? Who won't? How will the state fund core public services that are assessed by all 4 million Oklahomans, no matter their race, gender, citizenship, or socioeconomic status? I am disappointed by the court's rulings, but we cannot allow the courts to divide us essentially into 2 or more states with divided citizenship and differing sets of rules on how to conduct business. I am hopeful that we can forge a stronger future if we remember what Oklahomans set forth to do in 1907, to establish one state and to secure a stable, sustainable, and vibrant future for the betterment of all Oklahomans. I know this is possible because I have sat at the table with a number of our tribal partners. We crafted a new gaming agreement with the mission to benefit all 4 million Oklahomans. And we negotiated with tribes that each reflect the immense diversity of size, geography, and needs of tribal citizens. With a fresh slate, we achieved a fair market rate for Las Vegas style games, doubling the highest rate found in the 2004 gaming compacts, from 6% to 13%. We established clear auditing and transparency measures to protect the integrity of the compact and ensure the trust of all Oklahoma citizens. We restored dispute resolution language to keep future negotiations out of costly court battles. Our new gaming compacts were affirmed by the U.S. Department of Interior and showed when the state and tribes are at the table together, we can achieve better public policy, and healthier relationships. This was an important journey for all of us, but now we must look at where we go from here. What I can speak to today is that my convictions remained unchanged. When I ran for office, I committed to bring a fresh set of eyes to state contracts. I committed to bring more accountability to state government and to address bureaucratic structures that diminish the voice of ordinary Oklahomans. I presented Oklahoma with a vision to become a top 10 state, to pursue solutions that would deliver a more prosperous future for the next generation of Oklahomans. But I cannot do this alone. It is why 2 weeks ago I instructed state agencies to look at how the U.S. Supreme Court's decisions could have an impact on how they deliver public services. Agencies like the Oklahoma Department of Human Services with its foster care programs, and the Oklahoma Department of Transportation with its future expansion of public roads and bridges. The agencies will share these reports with a commission I established of Oklahoma's finest trailblazers. They have already begun meeting and discussing ways to protect our union and strengthen our future as one state. As it pertains to both federal court rulings, I am in discussion with elected leaders in the state House and state Senate about how this impacts our budget and shapes policy debates going into the 2021 session. And I have also reached out to various tribal leaders, and I have returned to traveling the state every week. This is no small task we face as a state. Where we go from here will define an entire generation, which is why I will continue to listen and will remain committed to communicating every step of the way. We are actively moving towards the turnarounds voters demanded. However, it will take all of us working together to become a top 10 state. And as we close our time today, I want to encourage you to get plugged in, volunteer on a state board or commission, run for a seat on your local school board, open and continue to grow businesses, and help move our state forward. May God bless you, and may God bless the great state of Oklahoma.
So we all know that this year has presented us with a set of unique circumstances, and the pandemic has changed life as we know it. And we will move forward with One Voice task forces this year virtually. In fact, there's never been a more important time for you to come together and engage and be a part of our economic recovery for northeastern Oklahoma. So we'll be moving forward on Zoom with all 9 task forces. We'll have the same robust debate and discussion about the issues that you and the business community want to see move forward to the final policy agenda for 2021.
One Voice says it all. I mean, this is a diverse group of leaders coming together with one voice.
It's really interesting when you sit down at a table of people that you don't know and are all from different backgrounds, all have different ideas, and then quickly realize that really everybody's here because they care about the state, not just Tulsa. And we were able to pretty quickly talk about not only what was most important to us, but what might make the biggest impact in our state.
During the coming months, you'll have a great opportunity to represent your industry and your company or business through these 9 task forces.
It's been wonderful to be around like-minded individuals as we've been talking about education issues, but additionally here to sit at the table and to advocate for issues that we believe in and find common ground in so many themes that weave together. It's really been a rewarding experience.
I get the opportunity to hear from others on what's happening, on the education side, which I have an idea of, but then you get a little deeper insight into all of that. So it's a great way to have good insights from all areas that are important to Tulsa.
You can view the entire schedule online at tulsachamber.com/One Voice task forces. They'll elevate their top 3 issues, which will then go on to the One Voice Summit, the hallmark of our agenda setting process for the year. This will take place later in the fall, in October, and the issues determined there will make the final policy agenda.
Just this year being my first year, a lot of back and forth, and negotiating and collaborating on figuring out where our priorities exist in the task forces, and then seeing that come to fruition today with our number one priorities, and then trying to decide what our next priorities will be.
Getting people to show up, getting their neighborhood association together to talk about ideas, and then taking that group. Again, it needs to be where two or more are gathered. You need to bring a group together, whether down at City Hall, down at the state capitol, or down into Washington, D.C. That's effective. When you're carrying a diverse Republican, Democrat, Independent alike, getting everybody together on one message is something that will affect change in our state.
As a community, we've pivoted very quickly and come together to help small businesses keep their doors open, to ensure that our public education systems and our workers are taken care of. And now's the chance to harness all of that goodwill, all of that creative thought, all of the ideas for recovery. This will help us as we continue to recover and as we continue to grow stronger as a community.
Good afternoon. I'm Roger Ramsire, Vice President and Tulsa Market Leader for Cox Communications, and I have the humbling privilege to serve as Chair of the Tulsa Regional Chamber of Commerce. As the video just detailed, the participation of business leaders in the public sector policy process is absolutely critical to moving our state forward and enhancing the economic prosperity of our great state. Consistent with the record attendance we are seeing at chamber events during this unprecedented and unforeseen period of history, we are so pleased to see more than 1,000 business leaders, civic leaders, nonprofit executives, and elected officials joining us today for the Governor's State of the State address. The Tulsa Regional Chamber hosts events like this to keep our members engaged and informed. And we're thankful to have elected officials like Governor Kevin Stitt, who invest the time to dialogue with member companies and obtain input. And of course, we are especially proud in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to have a governor from Tulsa leading our great state. So on this beautiful day, characterized by Chamber of Commerce weather with a high temperature today forecast at just 83 degrees, we'll hope that continues, right? It's now my honor to ask Governor Stitt just a few questions here during the remainder of our time before the top of the hour. Now, we're not able to take live questions today because of the tremendous size of the audience, but we do have several questions this afternoon that incorporate feedback from the Chamber's member companies. So, Governor, we want to start the portion of today's meeting with the question and answers with a little bit of a light-hearted question. The Tulsa Ironman Triathlon, which the Chamber and Visit Tulsa worked so hard to attract, has been postponed because of the pandemic to May of 2021. So the burning question that we all want to know, will you be the first governor to participate in an Ironman right here in your hometown 10 months from now?
Well, I was disappointed. I was excited when we got it and then disappointed when it got postponed. We need to talk to the lieutenant governor. He actually faked a knee injury. We were going to split it. I've done two kind of Olympic distance tries before. So I was going to swim and ride half the bike, and then he was going to do the other half the bike and then do the run portion. And but yes, the lieutenant governor and I are planning on, and I'm going to just throw the challenge. So everybody that knows Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell, let's just throw down the challenge that he needs to do the second half of that with me, and we'll start training for it. It'll be a lot of fun, and yeah, I want Oklahomans and Tulsans to come out. That's going to be a great event.
So we've got 10 months of training time for that. So this is 2020, and that means it's a census. And one thing that may have fallen off a lot of people's radar screens is the fact it is time for the census. Can you speak to the importance of that and why Oklahomans need to participate?
Yeah, well, so it's super important. We spent about close to $20 billion in our state. That's our state budget. 40% of that comes from federal dollars. So it is so important. Every 10 years we do a census. Oklahomans need every single person to fill that out. It takes about 5 minutes. You need to do that. The second reason it's important locally for Tulsa and all the communities around is there'll be a redistricting, and you don't want to lose any representation to Oklahoma City based on the redistricting number. So it's so important that Tulsa, all the communities around and the counties around fill that out and have that count accurate. And but literally, I was in Seminole on Friday, and the stats they told me that if we just under in Seminole County by 2%, it cost us $10 million over the decade. That county, if it's a 5% under count, it moves to $75 million. That's how critical that census is. And so we need every Oklahoman to fill that out, because that's roads and bridges and healthcare and education. Those are the dollars that we spend and invest back in Oklahoma citizens.
And we know the deadline for self-reporting has changed from July 31st, now been extended to October 31st. So for all Oklahomans who haven't yet taken advantage of that on the internet, now is the time. So let's switch to another subject. As you mentioned during your address just now, Oklahoma has experienced, unfortunately, a considerable drop in the number of oil rigs in our state. Our hoteliers, our restaurateurs have been impacted so negatively. Talk to us about what the implications of this are for our budget.
Yeah, so we had a budget shortfall this year. The session that we just got out of, it was about $1.3 billion. The oil rig counts, gross production tax is a large part of our revenue at the state. We've gone from about 110 rigs this time last year down to under 10. The budget forecast coming up for next session, which will be in here in February, is between $1.3 to $1.7 billion off. So we have some tough decisions to make. The legislature is in charge of writing that budget, and I look forward to working with them. We want to protect the core services, but I'll tell you this, I'm so thankful that we saved my first session $200 million, and we went into this downturn with the largest savings account in our state's history, over $1 billion. And I remember in that session, when the times are going good, nobody can foresee the downturn. But I remember some of the conversations I told the folks, we've got to save money right now. We need to save $200 million, because if you don't save in the good times, when you've got revenue going up, when are you going to save? And we know as business people, revenue doesn't just always go up in a straight line. So thank goodness we went into this downturn and we were able to weather the last 3 months of fiscal year 2020. We were able to weather this 2021 budget, but now we're out of savings, and we'll have to make some tough decisions when we get back into session in 2022.
So along with Secretary Sean Copeland, another great Tulsan, you've taken a very forward role in the state's economic development efforts, while also working to expand Oklahoma's toolbox of business attraction tools like the Governor's Quick Action Closing Fund. In anticipation of a tough budget during the next legislative session, what can be done to protect and prioritize proven economic incentives which help attract and retain jobs?
Well, first off, we were so fortunate this year. We've got the third stimulus package, which brought in, about $1.2 billion into our state, and it was designed to reimburse state agencies and municipalities for any COVID-related expenses. So I just announced that. I'm sure some of the city officials, we hadn't told that till today, that we just gave $30 million to the city of Tulsa out of that fund. So that's a huge deal. But also, I thought it was so important to get money to the small business. So we set up a $100 million plan to get money out to small business. We specifically excluded publicly traded companies. We wanted to get this on Main Street in our communities all across the state. We prioritize minority-owned businesses. And so we're trying to get that in there. And I just want to also remind Oklahomans, we are months and months ahead of other states. There's other cities in Los Angeles, California. These folks still haven't had a haircut since March. The economic feeling and climate and public sentiment is so much different in Oklahoma than it is when I travel in other states and talk to other governors around the state. So we're managing this very well, specifically on whether there'll be money to replenish the closing fund next year. That's something we're going to have to work with the legislature with a budget cut, with revenue down, I should say. I don't know. That's going to be difficult. But I'm glad I got some money out to local businesses, and we're going to do everything we can with some of the incentives we have on engineering tax credit. We also are focused on manufacturers on automotive parts, which we're really going after that sector very, very hard. And I also have directed the Commerce Department to go after some of these states that are still shut down. I'm telling you, the businesses are going crazy in some of these states that are still shut down. And so we've got the largest pipeline we've ever had in commerce, and we're going to continue to go after that hard.
So tourism is a major driver for the Tulsa area and brings lots of out-of-state dollars into our local economy. And with the launch of the state's new branding initiative under the leadership of Lieutenant Governor Pinnell, talk to us a little bit about what's happening on the tourism front. I know my wife was hoping to go to a cabin in Broken Bow, and they're all reserved for the rest of the summer. Talk to us about your thoughts.
Yeah, well, first off, Lieutenant Governor Matt Pinnell is doing an amazing job. We work together so well. We put him over tourism. He's done a fantastic job. That rebranding effort was so important. We had 150 different state agencies, and everybody had a different logo, a different color scheme. So we wanted one brand in Oklahoma. We thought that would help us from a marketing standpoint, and it has. So he's done a great job. Back to my governor's scorecard, which I talked about in my speech, I really want Oklahomans to look at that, and it gives you a realistic idea of where we're at today. We don't hide or sugarcoat anything, and I tell our state agencies, if we're 50th against every other state, I want you to put it out there. Then I want you to show what we need to do to be 25th, and then what we need to do to be top 10. And you can see when you're realistic about where you're at, you know where you're headed and you know where you're going, and you can put a plan in place to go achieve that. So in tourism, I have every cabinet secretary give me 2 to 3 big metrics. And so we track visits to Oklahoma, hotel rooms, and tourism is going crazy. We are doing such a good job with our parks. We were one of the few states that kept our parks open. And so with Director Winchester, we're redoing all of our restaurants around the state. We've done a private partnership with a restaurant group that's setting up new restaurants at Lake Murray and different places around the state. Romano's State Park. They're redoing the bathrooms. So we're really trying to up that game. We've done some bonding for our tourism and our state parks. We want to be top 10. And that's the message that I have with every one of my state agencies. You give me the plan how to become top 10. We'll go figure out how to get the money, how to fund it, and how to go there. Because Oklahomans deserve it. Oklahomans want that. And the RV dealerships, I know I'm talking a lot. Those guys can't even keep an RV on the showroom right now. Boat dealerships, Grand Lake, all the tourism things are really starting to explode. That's economic dollars into our state. It's something we can't take for granted, and I want to continue to push forward on that with the help of our team.
So I think we only have time for one last question, and we'll take on a little bit of a toughie. State Question 802, recently passed by a slim margin. Explain for us and educate us what are the next steps for you and the legislature to ensure that this is fully implemented by the required date of July 2021.
Yeah, it did. What's interesting is the day of election, it was defeated 55-45. But the absentee ballots, it passed 80-20. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but it passed by, I don't know, 6,000 votes or something. The problem with it is it's now part of our Constitution, so we have to fund it. It's going to cost $164 million. So where's that money going to come from? I'm not raising taxes on hardworking Oklahomans. We don't have $164 million sitting around. As we just talked about, we have a $1.3 billion shortfall. So you have to take it out of other state agencies. You've got to decide, because now constitutionally you have to spend that money. So or it's going to come out of the providers, and it's a provider tax or provider fee. It's called a shop fee. And so the legislature, they've got a tough decision on where to come up with that $164 million. I'll obviously work with them, but that's something that's got to be funded now in perpetuity, because it's part of our Constitution. That's why I think it's bad when you tie stuff to your Constitution, because it doesn't give our legislature any flexibility, especially if the feds change something a year from now, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years. We're still stuck now potentially paying $300 million. And Oklahomans, it's part of our Constitution, and we got to fund it.
So for all of the challenges being faced, I think you kind of started out your first year with some floods, and then we hit a pandemic. We're hoping there's no plagues to follow. But with all of the things you have done, there have been so many advances, and on behalf of the business community, we are greatly indebted. I know amazingly this morning on the cover of the Tulsa World, so many people are very, very excited about one that may not be on the top of your mind, and that's the increase in the speed limit on the interstate. But hey, we'll be excited about that. So we appreciate your opportunity and here with us today and your work with the Tulsa Regional Chamber as we all strive to make Oklahoma a top 10 state. And to everybody who joined virtually today, thank you for tuning in to the Chamber's State of the State. Please take note of the sponsors listed on your screen and call on them for your business needs as Chamber members pursue mutually advantageous commerce with each other. Have a great day, and it's a great time to be a Tulsan and an Oklahoman.